Good evening. Can you all hear me in the room? Yes. Can one of you say something?
Hola.
There we go. Awesome. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call today to order's meeting. Erin, can you please take attendance for us?
Okay, I'm working on it. Let's see. Who do we have? Casey on Zoom. We have Quentin on Zoom. We have, that would be
Kim Lanier.
Kim. And who's in the corner up there?
Lori?
Lori?
Lois?
Lois. And
Lois?
Dana.
Okay. Lois, what's the last name?
Fox.
Fox? Like the animal? Okay. And then, let's see. I think I got everybody here. Over here, we've
So
got
Art Ryerson and Jim McMaster from
Yeah.
Ex Officio.
Barrett Ryerson and Jim McMaster. And then Brian
Yes.
Stewart. Yeah, okay. And then, who are you, sir?
My name's Jason Fields.
Jason Fields, okay. Gotcha. All right, we're done.
Nope, you got Cat out here too.
Oh, where? Oh,
Cat's on Zoom.
we can't see her. Okay. Got her.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. All right. We're going to go ahead and go to the approval of the February meeting minutes. Those were included in the packet sent out to all the members. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, I move the motion to approve the February 8th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Passes. Awesome. Now we will move to our designated public comment period. Were any of the folks on Zoom or in the room looking to make a public comment tonight? All right. Sounds like we just got some visitors tonight. I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period for tonight, hearing no interest in the public participation. Next item on the agenda is Bob and Crystal Riley Park work party planning. So for a recap, last month, we went ahead and scheduled tentatively a Trails work party on June 3rd. That is National Trails Day. I don't believe we had any solid assignments from that discussion, but I think it would be good for us to just kind of talk about what kind of goals we're looking for, and then the plan forward for promotion and making sure that we work with CPRD staff to have that adequately managed for risk and liability, and then also for having a plan for what trails we're interested in working on, and then making sure we have the tools to do so. Brian, Casey, I know you're joining us on Zoom. Are there any big parts of the trail network up there that we should be looking to address here coming out of the winter season that might impact the anticipated group size that we would want to try and recruit for?
Quentin, I think it'd be better to, we could narrow down the scope of an area to do it as we come out of winter, and Russ can evaluate the trails and we see where he's at with that. And then that would help facilitate a more positive experience, I think, and be more productive instead of trying to narrow down a specific area right now or whatever. I can say that CPRD could absolutely provide the tools and equipment and you know, porta potties, whatever, and to make it a more pleasurable experience for everybody up there and work together. But yeah, so if that makes any sense, we can maybe wait a little bit later to decide where. I think the scope, it's up to you, as big as the property is. I don't think you could have, you know, you could have 30 people or 10. We could find something to do that would be worthwhile and enjoyable, I think, even.
From a staff and tooling perspective, though, I mean, we've worked together for my projects. I mean, you don't see any challenges with having too many people?
Not really, because there's different things you could do that you don't necessarily are using, major tools or whatever. You could provide a lot of loopers or a lot of hand clippers. You've got raking, picking up things, branches, all kinds of stuff. That basic trail work, there might be some raking and mucking that goes on or what have you. But no, I really don't, Quentin. I think we'd be fine.
That was one of the main things I just wanted to check in on, as we're, probably working with folks to get the word out there, just making sure that we don't have, the entire city of Newburgh show up, and, that's a little bit too much for us to handle. So as long as you're comfortable with, we get a good group out there, and the scope that we determine as we get closer to June 3rd, we can go beyond that, and we can still accommodate that the day of, then that's really just wanted to make sure we're okay with.
Sure. On a side note, if you could get half of Newburgh to show up there, I think that would be wonderful to show that, expose that park up there to people that don't know it's there.
Art.
Yeah, Quentin, I'm curious from Casey and Brian. Really like the way you and Young, that trail where you spread I don't know what the bark material is, but it really helped with the muddy areas. And do you think there might be an opportunity for us to do some of that to, if we identify some of the areas that are seasonally more muddy than others?
Very well could be. Yeah, absolutely. And that would be with Russ's expertise too, in terms of the
Yeah.
best way to properly treat trails.
Sure.
I'm sure there's different aspects of equestrian as opposed to bike and
Right.
hiking,
Right.
and
Yeah.
walking, excuse me, but absolutely, stuff like that.
Great.
Perfect.
Speak of the devil.
Knowing that, I know that we made working groups or focus groups way back in the day in our infancy. Do we think that we should have a smaller group meeting? I'm trying to remember what the groups are. I believe there was a public engagement group, a promotional group. I think Cindy was in charge of that one. As I look through the drive here, 1 second. Because we originally came out into 3 groups, and then I believe that we were looking at 4, and we were looking at a volunteer projects focus group. That only has 1 member on this sheet. I don't think we necessarily need to spend a meeting as an entire group necessarily going through and kind of ironing out the basics of, a public notice and promotion through the channels we've discussed before, like the farmers market or other events, and then also, general promotion through CPRD outlets. But is Cindy there?
I am.
Awesome. Would you be willing via email or through a meeting of some sort to get a group together and come up with a basic marketing plan for a work party on June 3rd, knowing that the scope will be defined as we get closer to the event, but just being able to have a plan and start to get the notice out there to groups for that date?
I'd be more than happy to. I'd like to have, if possible, CPRD staff people to have a big voice in it, because I don't really know what to do and what's comfortable and what they want me to say and where and when.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely want to be, directed by Kat or someone like that.
Yeah, I don't know, Kat, or I don't know who else would be appropriate for that.
This is Alan. Is the June 3rd event independent of signage? Are we done with signage?
That, from my understanding, is now in the staff's hands. So I don't know if Casey or Brian want to speak to that, but we made a recommendation, and if we are needed, our input will be sought again. But I believe that they got it was approved by the board of directors, and they got their directive to work at their discretion with the budget to get that accomplished. I don't know if Casey or Brian, you have anything to add to that.
I think we're good there.
Okay. Kat, you unmuted there. I don't know if you were trying to say something but do you know, would you be the point person for working on promotion for this event?
Hi, Quentin. Yeah, so promotion, marketing, outreach, information, message creation, all of the deliverables that are related to those, yes, but actual on the ground maintenance, trails work, anything that remotely looks like landscaping, that I would defer to Brian as being the appropriate contact for that. So I wasn't exactly sure where you were looking for guidance there, but that's how that would divide.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I think for us as a committee, if we just, June 3rd, I threw that out there and it seems like that's an appropriate date. It's National Trails Day. If we set a time and understanding that the work to be done will be on trails, I think that's really all we need at this time to prepare messaging. And then once we get closer to the June 3rd date, Brian and Casey can update us on what specific areas and we can begin to plan out where we need to allocate resources there on the ground and what work might be done. To that point, Kat, as far as like a registration, do you feel like that'd be needed? And if so, is that something that we could do through CPRD, or would that be just need to go out and find, like Sign Up Genius or something like that?
There definitely should be a sign up registration, and that should be directly tied with the volunteer signups and waivers database, so that all of that's connected. But yeah, something like Sign Up Genius would be perfectly fine to use.
Okay.
And I'll just also throw out, I just checked my calendar. I am not in town for that weekend. I'm at a convention, but I'll certainly be available for any of the promotional and information things around that leading up to it, and would love to have somebody capture some images so we can use those for outreach and public relations following it as well.
Perfect. Yeah, Cindy, I mean, I'm thinking, if we can settle as a group, maybe the date, time, and then possibly you could work with whomever might be interested. I'd be happy to help as well. Just getting a Sign Up Genius prepared, and then working with Kat to have, social or flyers or whatever public notices might be appropriate to start getting folks to sign up. Obviously it's March, but I think having it ready here, maybe an update in our April meeting and then having it ready sometime in April, that'll give us a month to kind of push it out ahead of June 3rd, since it is the beginning of the month. Is that something you'd be comfortable with?
Absolutely, yes.
Perfect. Thank you. From my experience doing work, I mean, I've worked with Brian, actually worked for Brian and worked with Brian on projects. I would suggest we stick to either shifts, either 2, 3-hour shifts, morning, afternoon, or, doing one of those. June shouldn't be too hot, especially there at that park. So we could do an afternoon shift, one shift if we wanted to, but I'm not sure folks on the committee if we would want that flexibility. I'm assuming that there'd be, to Brian's point, plenty of work that could be done. So, between 6 hours to 2 shifts, we could probably muster enough folks and have work for them to do. Does anyone have any objection to, like, say 2 3-hour shifts, 9 to noon, and like a noon to 3, or an alternative?
Sounds like a good job. Yeah, I think, and some people might sign up for both.
Let's go ahead and go forward with that then. June 3rd, let's do a 9 a.m. to noon, and then noon to 3. Are folks okay with that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's move forward with that, and then we'll plan accordingly once we get closer as far as what those 2 groups might do and what staff support might be needed. But I don't think, I mean, unless Brian, there's anything else that you think in the promotional phase, any other details we need to sort out. I think, to your point, we can get the details as far as what exact work will be done as we get closer to the event. That doesn't need to be included in promotions.
No, I think you're good with what you talked about.
Perfect.
If I could, Quentin, part of the promotion might be just the park itself. The work party, that's wonderful, and I love the idea where you're going there. I'm all about that. But you might take the approach too that it's wonderful you folks are all volunteering and working with CPRD on developing this property, and that's way and above fantastic. But the rest of the public, we kind of joked about Newburgh or whatever, might not even be aware of that wonderful asset that belongs to them as Mr. Wallace in this room. That it could be a day you don't have to work. You can come up there and walk the trails and get an exposure. That's just a thought.
Yeah, and I don't know, Cindy, if anything y'all discussed in your group last year. I know that y'all went out to a few events to help promote the parks and the trails, or anyone else that was involved in that. Is that something that we could easily do again here this spring, summer? Some type of just general trails marketing campaign?
I think it'd be great if, I think we did what the farmers market, Alan and Michelle did that, but any other ideas that anyone has to promote would be great.
We really didn't do much of it. We expanded on.
I think at that point, Riley wasn't really top of the list,
Mhm.
because people like me get lost in there. So now might be a good time to.
Yeah, Kim? You're raising your hand.
Yeah, hi. Yes, I had a suggestion. The Camellia Festival is April 15th. And I was thinking that would be a great time to promote the committee and the work party.
Awesome. I know that Brian is a big part of that. I'm assuming that is something that we could probably have a booth at or a table with CPRID.
We could absolutely make that happen, sure.
Awesome.
I would make it, let me know if you do decide and make a commitment to that, because space is very valuable at that popular little festival, and I want to ensure you'd have a spot.
For sure. And what can you remind me the date of that? I'm sorry.
April 15th.
Awesome.
I don't have the times, so I don't know exactly. I know I was going to try to do a walk, the 5K walk, but I would be happy to volunteer to help with a booth if needed.
Quinn, the 5K, 10K run walk, Camellia run walk starts at 9, and the official festival itself is open at that time too, with the ballroom and the vendors and all that open at 10. The first entertainment starts at 10, and it goes till 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I think I don't want to put people on the spot here to commit to that. I'll probably follow up after this meeting via email, and if we can get enough folks to be interested in that, probably in shifts. I wouldn't want anyone to commit that full time. But let's see if out of the meeting we can't get folks who'd be interested in doing so. And then Brian, you want us to let you know, or is that going to go through Kat?
Definitely let me know on that.
Okay. Are folks comfortable with that via email, just kind of discussing who might be able to pick up shifts and participate at a table? I got Kim down as volunteer. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Another one would potentially be the Old Fashioned Festival. That's a later summer. Maybe that's the last weekend of July. I know that CPRD has a booth there, and likewise, they also have vendors that I feel like they probably book up quick. I'm not sure if that's something that we could piggyback off of CPRD and just have somebody there with CPRD staff, or pamphlets there or something.
For the last couple of years, Quentin, we haven't had a booth down there.
Oh, okay. Always remember you had that spinning wheel with prizes or something.
No, there was COVID too.
Okay. Yeah, that one I'm not sure. I unfortunately haven't been as up to date as I used to on the Old Fashioned Festival. I'm not sure if the deadline's passed for that one to get a booth or if that's of interest to us. I believe there is some fee associated with it, even for nonprofits, but that might be something to look at here in the next month or so. I will give an update. I'm still slowly working through getting the web application ready. Here in the next few weeks, my roommate will be starting phase 2 of the internship to map the other parks, but we have some preliminary trail maps that I need to follow up with Kat to make sure that we can publish some ahead of this spring opening of Bob and Crystal Riley Park. But I'm hoping that we'll have that web application and the printable map available. So, come time the trails are truly accessible to folks, that we'll have plenty of information so you don't get, don't know who said that earlier, but you don't get lost up there. We don't want that. So I am still working on that with Kat, but that I am anticipating, I can't speak for Kat, but I'm anticipating that should be ready before we open the park. So as far as other promotion goes, we could probably piggyback off of CPRD social media if we want to maybe push that work party and as mentioned, just the park itself and getting people excited about being able to go back up there and utilize the trails for horses and cyclists. I'm not sure about the other parks. I know, Kat, you've been working on updating the parks guide, the trails guide. Perhaps we could kind of feature each one of the parks that have a significant number of trails ahead of the busy season, the summer season here.
Yeah, that's still in progress. And one of the things that we're waiting for is the finalization of the map for Bob and Crystal Riley Park.
All right. That's a friendly nudge for me to follow up with you. Thank you.
Well, it's not all on you at all. No, it's just the whole process, selecting which of those trails are going to be united. Those trail segments are going to be full. It really comes down to the naming of the trails and the designating of those. So you've done the rough work, but you really can't go any farther with that until those pieces start to move forward.
Okay. We did, I know that, and Bob Olson is now here. Aaron, just so that you know. I know that Dana came to last month's meeting and reminded us so kindly that there are more maps and more names of the trails up there. I don't know if Brian or Casey, were we able to find those up there at Bob and Crystal Riley Park?
Excuse me. I'm attending kind of ill, and that's why I'm not in person. But Dana's up there, and that's her charge is to find the existing. They used to have a master plan for the park when Bob and Crystal Riley were developing it. And she has let me know she hasn't found that information as of yet. We're still searching. But she, there's been quite a few, not members of the committee, but members of the Bob and Crystal Riley, Brian Bowman, Dana Kemp, and Hope Robertson are and have reviewed the RFQ for the master plan up there. And so we're going to do some interviews probably next week or the following week to get that put in place for the master plan. Along with the trails and all the things that are going on in the county, I should just give you an update on the Ewing Young Bridge. We got the land use decision back from the county, and they denied the request for the bridge. So we are going to appeal it, and their reasoning is the same as the Amhalis Trail in its land use and wording within their documents. So, a lot of trail development within our parks, because they're not parks and open space, are zoned AF10 or EF80 or 40 or some other type of zoning, we may have a little bit of a struggle developing trails on some of those properties. So just kind of a heads up on that. According to what I read during the 2020 Yamhill, the LUBA documentation that was presented to the county, LUBA made some recommendations to the county on how to change the wording to accommodate those types of situations, such as trails. And I technically they're not called, they're using the word transportation in them, and really it's a recreational thing. It's not a transportation thing. So we may have a little bit of a
Problem?
I wouldn't say problem, but a little bit of a mountain to climb for any trails being developed in Yamhill County.
I spoke with you on Monday briefly, Casey, and you said that situation there with the county should not impact our current work on the Dundee bypass trail. Is that correct?
Not the current work. It may impact phase 2.
Okay.
And it may impact, also the school district is proposing a green seam trail out in Dundee, where the new elementary school is going. That has the potential to have some land use issues as well. So I'm not sure how to resolve it other than to kind of just keep moving forward. And it's going to be a little bit of a battle, but we'll just keep pushing, I guess.
And was the I'm trying to read back on my notes, the adoption, that approval, whatever, that the county and city are discussing right now relating to the bypass, the interchange area management plan, that's for phase 2, correct?
That's ODOT's phase 2A, I believe. That's the interchange. Our phase 1 of the bypass trail goes through part of that. And they're trying to exclude all mention of our name out of that. Even though ever since the proposed bypass and the bypass committee, Shell Park and Rec, and that trail was mentioned in the development of the bypass. So Yamhill County commissioners are trying to omit all mention of trails within that framework.
And that trail, as it currently is planned, relies on the ODOT right of way in its totality, or there?
There's a potential to cross some existing driveways that may be some other zoning.
Okay. But that is not in this first phase that we're currently working through, correct?
Not in this first phase.
Okay.
No.
Perfect. Thank you. Dana, you had your hand raised here?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know, Quentin, I went through the map that you had and then the original maps that we had for trail names. And so what I'll do is scan that and just email that over to you. There's not too many that are missing, but maybe 6 or 7.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Anything that we can update from existing resources, I think that's what, I think Kat's hoping for. And, we want to make sure that we're having names that we can use and the ones that are accurate and reflect what was already committed to up there. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Casey. I know that wasn't on the agenda, and I didn't want to anticipate you speaking on that, but we did have some questions for committee members and via email. Yeah, so it looks like if I'm correct, we can continue moving forward with our maintenance of the current trails. It's the sticky situation comes where we want new trails on these parks that are actually designated as agricultural land.
Correct.
All right, perfect. Anyone else have any questions relating to this topic?
That's specific to AF10, is that correct?
That is correct from what I understand. And I'm not sure why they omitted some language from just the F10 and not the EFs, EF 40, 80. It seems pretty specific.
Any other questions around that? Awesome. All right, I think that concludes this work party planning discussion. We'll hopefully have some more information coming out of our February meeting. Cindy, I'll be sure to follow up after we get the minutes and just kind of reiterate everything in writing so that we have that as a committee. But I appreciate you taking that for us. Next, Yamhelis West Sider Trail discussion. And I provided the committee some comments on this one. I know that Peter Siderius also provided some comments. I put this on the agenda specifically because it's come up in several conversations that I've heard, whether it be the CPRD Board of Directors meetings, indirectly, not as agenda item. Obviously, Alan is a board member of that group, and this group has had numerous presentations and public comment regarding it. There's been ideas, discussion, whatever you want to call it, about CPRD potentially looking at that as a project. We had it on our agenda list for quite a while and had some discussion around it. And I think the most recent conversations and the general consensus that I've heard through the board of directors is that this is out of the scope of CPRD. And because of those reasons, we really shouldn't be moving forward with it. And I think given the discussion that's been happening pretty consistently over the last few years through various outlets leading back to this committee, I put out a potential motion to just formally say that we do not recommend the board of directors that CPRD pursue with any acquisition, planning, management, or funding of the Yamhelis West Sider Trail, not in any attempt to reflect the merits of the trail itself, but simply that because of the scope of that project being outside of district boundaries and because of the challenges surrounding that, it just doesn't make sense for us as a committee and as the district to pursue that, given that we want to make sure that we focus on our in-district trail projects that other members have brought forth to us. So that is the reason why I put it on there. It's more of a formality of what there's some mixed discussion, but I think the general consensus is that CPRD shouldn't have jurisdiction over this and therefore shouldn't get involved. But I put that out there as something that we could potentially discuss tonight.
I agree with you, Clinton, that it's outside of the district, number one. And there's enough challenges that I think it's premature for CPRD to be aggressive about pursuing that. But we had a board meeting yesterday, and I think it, even though CPRD may not want to be involved in ownership of it, there might be an opportunity to have some cross-pollination between the two groups, and I'm prepared to discuss that. After the agenda came out, I emailed Clinton about that idea, and prepared to discuss that.
Yeah, that's something that I think, Alan, as individual members, I mean, myself included, I think that's a great project on its merits and something that, I hope at some point the county or whomever's jurisdiction, I'm assuming the county based off of the geographic location, pursues that project with the various stakeholders that are involved and the interest groups there. And that's where I think as individual members, we could participate in that process, contribute to the Friends of Yamhilis West Sider Trail. And that's where, we kind of have an ear into that through Alan. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Okay, we'll talk about yesterday's meeting. Stan Primovich, which is a former county commissioner, is on that board. And he sort of opened it up and said, okay, we have 19 months before we get another county commissioner, and that's what we need to be focused on. And so we talked about that. How do you do that? And I asked him, how many hours a week does county commissioner take? He goes, well, in my case, it was 80, but it's a full-time job. It pays $80,000 a year. And the trail community needs to come up with a candidate, or maybe the broader community needs to come up with a candidate, encourage someone that take the time to do that. I applied myself, I can't think of anyone, but it's about county commission, number one. Number two, they were pretty emphatic that they are feeding the commission, feeding various groups, school boards and the Parks Commission, and with like-minded people. And the Planning Commission meets on April 6th, where the opponents of trails countywide are trying to get the Planning Commission, which is stacked by the county commissioners, to use their own language at the expense of staff to prevent trails in AF10 zones and beyond from happening. And they are encouraging participation in that April 6th Planning Commission meeting, whether it's through letters or by being there at that time to testify. And you look at, if you're interested, you could email me and I could get more details, but it's all sort of new to me. But shorthand, it's tell the county, use your staff's recommendations rather than Tom Hammer's or the opponent's trails language. Number one. Number two, maybe that's number three. We've had a bike group here testify, and there's a bike group in McMinnville called the Cranks. In an effort to get more participation in that meeting, what's the name of the group that's participated here? Do we know? They're out of Lake Oswego and they come down and use Bob and Crystal Riley Park. Is it the same group or is it a different group? And if so, it's a different group. And we contact them and alert them that their participation would be welcome.
Brian Bowman, right?
I don't know.
I think it's Brian
Right.
Bowman. I don't know the name of the group.
I don't know if he has a group, he has friends.
Yeah.
If you could email me his contact, I could connect the dots.
Anyone have his contact information?
Cat might have that.
Is that
Cat probably has that.
okay?
I have Brian's information.
Okay, email that to me and I'll contact them. Their participation would be welcome. On April 22nd, they are doing a Rails to Trails event to sort of raise awareness at the Banks for Noni Trail, the website. It's a Buxton Trailhead, I think, from 9 until 12, and so it's a grassroots effort to raise awareness about trails and get people involved. And
When was that?
April 22nd.
Okay.
Apparently, they've been manning a booth at the farmer's market in McMinnville. And I said, we've given that lip service, but haven't really developed it. But they're all about outreach and raising awareness in the county. That's it. also, independent of that, I could talk about the Knudsen Trail, but that can wait till it comes up to that.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's where I'm not sure if there's any other discussion here around this topic. I mean, I just personally, as a voting member, I just don't think, love the trail, great idea. I just don't think that CPRD should get involved, and I just want to make sure that we kind of make sure we address that in case folks are coming to us and asking why we aren't. Obviously, it's out of our jurisdiction. I think just reaffirming that to the board of directors.
I agree with that, but that doesn't mean that we can't be.
Yeah, I disagree. I disagree. Yeah, so it's gone from not being involved, or it's gone from not taking on the trails project to not being involved. And I think that it's a little premature to shoot down this project. I know there's a lot of challenges. I know that the politics right now are against it, but we've sat on this for close to 19 months as a committee. I don't see a problem sitting on it for another 19 months. What I don't want to do is support a motion that gives opposition to this trail ammunition to say, well, look, the trails, even the trails group back over there and the Chehalem Heritage Trail Group doesn't support this. I think we're going to give the opposition to this trail ammunition. I don't want to be a part of that.
If I may, as well, let's say the CPRD did want to take over the trail. The county commissioners are going to kill the trail anyway, so isn't it a moot point? Don't we need the commissioners, even if the Chehalem Parks and Recs had full support and funding of this trail?
Yeah, that's why we need different county commissioners.
Right, so I don't know why we would, I mean, it seems like a moot point. If we had commissioners that would even be willing to entertain a trail, that's one thing, but like Casey just said, we're not doing trails on ag land in our own district, let alone outside of our district, so it seems moot to me.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. And I think at least the perspective I was coming from is that we have these folks coming to us, and it's been discussed in various outlets as if it is a possibility that there should be a discussion over CPRD taking that project and attempting to see it through. And I think, I mean, it might be a matter of the words that we elect to use, but for us to continue to table and sit on it does open up this idea of, is that something at some point that we can entertain? And I just don't think that we necessarily want that in our court. It's more of CPRD should not get involved as far as trying to take on the project. To Alan's point, there can be cross-pollination. There's no reason why a network of trails throughout the county can't be a multi-agency effort. Or the individual members of our committee or the board of directors can support that project through whatever means are legally available to us. But for, members of the public or, potential discussion as far as board of directors, as far as the CPRD assets, as far as resources, the time of staff, or any tax dollars get thrown at this project, I don't think that we as a Parks District should be moving in that direction. And maybe that's just a matter of language, but it's been something that's come up several times across the 19 months that we've met here. And I want to make sure that we have an answer for the public in the next 19 months when we continue to get those questions, not necessarily the support or to say that the project shouldn't move forward in any capacity, but that it's not, don't come to us trying to seek a solution. We'll support you in doing so outside the meeting, but CPRD is not the avenue to get this project accomplished. I think it's really what I want to make sure that we address in some shape or form.
Well, regardless of whether we approve this motion or not, we still have an open forum for public comment. So those public comments, pro and con for the trail, can still potentially come here. I don't see that this accomplishes much other than to kind of put another nail in the coffin for the project. I don't see, it's odd to me that we're making a negative recommendation to the board. Like, we're not making a recommendation against turning Mount Hood into a national park. It's outside of our scope, right? why would we make a negative recommendation about this trail? It's outside of our scope. You know, it's just, like Marty's saying, it's a moot point.
Yeah, I think, looking at the scope of our committee, we are to bring recommendations for trail projects that are either generated from the public for our consideration or internally through our group, through our own outreach or our own idea generation being trail users. And I think that's where, if there are discussions happening outside of this group, interested in, CPRD absorbing this in some capacity. Initially, we had discussions around that possibility and having groups come in here and talk to us about that. I still think it's within our scope to say, we've had folks come in and say, this is, can CPRD do something? You should adopt this, try and see this through, support this. For us to say to the board of directors, hey, we've evaluated this and, it's out of your jurisdiction, you should stay out of this, given that it was a proposal that was brought to CPRD, and we are the group that is supposed to provide recommendations on these proposals, or at least, if there's public comment instigating us to consider that, I don't see it as necessarily a negative that's outside of our scope, in the fact that, it's an idea that's generated, brought to us numerous occasions, not in a formal proposal, but folks asking us, CPRD, is this something you can look at? Is this something you'd consider? And I think just making sure that we can close the door on this idea that CPRD can absorb it, and saying, that's all that we're saying, is that CPRD, because it's out of the jurisdiction, this trail project, we should not move forward in discussions around trying to support it in a direct way. If that's not a recommendation, that's fine. And I think, to your point, the public can come in here and provide comments to whatever means that they choose as far as trails go. And I think there comes a point to where our committee needs to put it aside and say, we appreciate you using our public forum as a trails committee to say that, reference our recommendation and the reasoning for why we don't believe that we have jurisdiction over this trail. And continue to focus on the trails that we have jurisdiction over and control over. And I think that's the premise, really. Like you said, we can't stop folks from coming and showing their support in our public forum, but if we're going to spend time as a committee to discuss that as a possibility, or to have folks at the board of directors or folks coming to try and suggest that we might have that possibility, I just don't think that we want to entertain that necessarily.
In a broader issue, does CPRD manage anything outside the jurisdiction at all at this point in time?
As far as outside of a jurisdiction?
Outside of the CPRD jurisdiction, are we doing anything outside of those boundaries? I hate to make the jurisdiction argument when I think I've heard that we can, and we sometimes do. I would hate to use that as, eliminating potentially, what if we have a trail that crosses jurisdictions? What if I'm
So-
concerned about
Set a
using,
precedence. You're setting the precedence.
yeah, even not in just regards to this trail, I just think that potentially closes doors overall.
So I don't know if this helps you guys in your decision making or not, but Tim and I are both strong supporters of the Yamhill West Sider Trail, but we understand that under the current political condition, that's not something that we'll be successful doing. And there are board members who don't think that because it is outside of the district, that's not something that we should pursue. Staff are, I shouldn't really speak for our staff, but I believe that most of our staff supports the Yamhill West Sider Trail, but at the same time, it's not a fight that we're ready to take on right now. So it would depend on what a future board does and what the future political situation is, whether they would reconsider it. But whether you guys bring a recommendation now or not, I can tell you currently that the current board and the current staff is not going to pursue taken over Yan Hills West Side.
That's what I've noticed over the last 19 months. Well, and just overall, I already knew this, but we haven't been presented directly. I mean, maybe Quentin is getting some emails in regards to this, but the committee here hasn't heard much about this lately. It's dead in the water for several reasons, including, so I agree with putting out some kind of blanket statement. And the agenda that was sent, I really had some trouble with that because I can see current members of the commission using those words directly. And I just don't necessarily think we want to step on all that at the moment. I don't think it's appropriate for timing purposes. I don't know how the future will unfold, but I don't want to narrow anything.
Yeah, I have a question. I have a comment. I appreciate your point, because if we have the opportunity to work with other entities and it connects to something, from our district or comes up to our district, or we can work with other people that way, we will. I mean, our board, it depends on the situation, but we're not going to say this is our boundary and this is all we do.
Well, and what
But
if
we're
you
not
have
going to
a-
go
Yeah,
way
what if you
outside
have
of
a
our
trail that has like a tiny quarter of a mile that's outside the district, but is on, I don't want there to be.
Trail would be a great example.
I do not want there to be argument. I do not want there to be like jurisdiction, sorry.
Well,
the
it's
whole
just
thing
not
is
trails.
dead.
It could also be a park.
Parks,
There's a lot of different things you could look at that way. So I don't think that, I think the district is open-minded to what comes to us. We may not want to do that, but we sure don't want to close the door to opportunities.
Yeah,
For-
and I think this
for our
motion
cons-
closes the door.
For our constituents, we do not want to close the door for opportunities for our constituents. And that's important because that's who we serve.
And would those opportunities where we have facilities offerings outside of the district, wouldn't they still, to your point, Jill, if you have a quarter mile of a 10-mile trail that goes outside of the Newburgh School District boundary, which is the CPRD boundaries, wouldn't we still have to obtain for that quarter mile, say a trail, some type of cooperating agreement and approval from the jurisdiction of that quarter mile, whether it be a county or another park and rec district? We couldn't, I think the premise is we can't take on a project outside of the district without collaborating and getting approval from the home district of that portion or in totality if it's outside of CPRD. Am I understanding that correct?
If we have an MOU with somebody, let's say Washington or Clackamas County, who also abuts our district, we'll work with them. Like we always have. So that's kind of how, I don't know if that answers your question.
But that collaboration is necessary for CPRD to be able to continue and see a project through that involves multiple jurisdictions or multiple agencies, right? You couldn't just do it without their support.
Correct. We'd have to work with someone to make this happen for sure. But it just depends on the situation. And it depends on the political climate. As they change, it seems every 10 years. So.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
So to the degree things are in flux, why do we have to make a decision?
Yeah, I think
Have a
that's.
motion.
We don't have to, and I am not necessarily prepared to do so. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we take a vote on this so that we can get this off the agenda. Move to approve Quinn's motion.
You move to approve it?
I move to approve it.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion is not brought to a vote. We do not have to make a motion on this, given it's an agenda item. It is just say discussion, and I think, I'm sitting here. I even pondered to myself, why should we have this on here? And I think I've enumerated that plenty of ways and different times. But I think throughout all of, we heard from Casey. I've heard it from the board of directors. I went back and provided as much direct information to the committee ahead of this meeting via email, video recordings of the board of commissioners for the county, unfortunately, I don't think we can avoid these conversations. And I think, if people are going to take our discussions out of context and use them for their own narrative, that's likely to happen regardless of how the discussion is taken. But I think we have to have these discussions sometimes. And I think if we are, I don't feel comfortable with my own, stated potential motion there. I don't want to second that. I want to bring it to a vote because I don't think it needs to happen given our discussion tonight. But I do think, even based off the conversation tonight, us not closing the door on the possibility of CPRD collaborating with whomever might in the future under a perfect political alignment and support of this project, wants to take it on and see it through. I think that there points out that there's still this idea, there's still this hope that CPRD can be involved. And I think after tonight's discussion, again, we can leave that door open. I'm fine with that. But I think we can't just mill over this discussion and table it as a committee that is tasked with providing CPRD with recommendations. Because to that point, we could sit here and make the complete opposite recommendation and say, CPRD, go out and regardless of what, the challenges we see from the commissioners, fight to collaborate with whomever is responsible to see the project through, because we support the project being a CPRD project one way or another. So I think we have to have this discussion, and I think it has to be in a public format. And regardless of who uses our, watches this recording and listens, we're tasked to consider trails and trail projects, whether they be within the boundaries of our district or collaborating with those outside the boundaries of the district, to the board of directors. Those recommendations go through us as far as a body to make those recommendations. So I appreciate everyone's dissent from that original motion there. And I think we have to have this discussion. To Jill's point, where's jurisdiction a feasible discussion point? Is it really? And, that opens up other avenues of, are there other projects that are collaborative with other counties or other park and rec districts? Is that a liability for us as far as trying to sift through ideas? I don't think so. And I think, between Matt and Marty, your comments, a moot point and voting through a negative recommendation, or if it, put on its head a positive recommendation, we'll set a precedent for potentially, in someone else's words, a stance on this project. And I think, looking at our scope to have this discussion around, we've heard it several times. I don't think we've had a formal proposal, but folks have come to us and presented it as an idea. It's been on our list of ideas and agenda items for the last 19 months. I don't want us to be afraid of any backfiring from our committee doing its due diligence and looking at the trail as an option for CPRD. And I think, if we're comfortable with this meeting tonight fulfilling that obligation, that's fine with me. But I was looking through the list of potential agenda items, and this was sitting there from a while ago. And I remember we just had presentation and didn't really come to any type of conclusion for ourselves. And it's been up discussion late, so that's why I put it on there. But having no motion and seconded for a vote, we can close this discussion item unless there's any other discussion that wants to be made here at this time.
And just kind of reiterate what I was saying, we're not discussing any trails on agricultural land within our jurisdiction. So that's something we should not be afraid about talking about either, because that really hampers us. That pretty much means any new trails that we're talking about are essentially within city limits. Is that not right at this moment? So that's something we need to talk about. How do we overcome, or do we have a role in overcoming as a committee or the board of directors, that opposition to trails, to recreational trails on agricultural land? Because like Casey said, the same, I guess at this point, we're not even talking about a Ewing Young Bridge. Right? So I guess, and that's within city limits is my understanding. So, I think we shouldn't be afraid, like you said, to talk about these things, even within our jurisdiction.
That's not within the city limits of the bridge.
Oh, it's not, okay. So
Yeah,
same.
yeah.
Same.
One side
Half of
is,
it is.
the other side
Oh,
is
gotcha.
not.
Where it starts when you cross
Yeah,
ends
so
up in a
like
floodplain.
what I'm saying is accurate. Pretty much right now, at this moment, politically, we're limited to trails, any new trails within city limits. So that's something to talk about. Maybe not today, but.
And I'm not sure what, as far as CPRD, either the board of directors or staff are thinking as far as the impact on our ability to push forward ideas as that meet those challenges on this agricultural land. I know that you talked about phase 2 of this bypass trail might be facing some challenges as far as LUBA or whatever agencies involved in evaluating land use on that. But I mean, are there challenges for our committee right now that would limit us in our scope in recommending or evaluating and recommending trails on agricultural land? Do we need to stray away from that? I don't know if that's a Casey question or a Cat question or a Bart or Jim question.
More of a staff question right now.
Quentin, this is Casey. I would say this, when we appeal this land decision down at Ewing, we'll find out some more. You know, it's not the planning department in Yamhill County. It is basically the planning commission, and the way that their codes, the county codes, are written as far as the zoning. And it doesn't, in as far as I've read, it doesn't align with what the state has recommended. And usually Yamhill County errs on the side of being more reasonable than state goals. But this one particular code isn't that way. And it was brought up in 2020 when they abandoned the Yamhillis Trail, and there was some mention in some documents from LUBA on how to change that and how to reword it so that more aligned with the state goals. And for whatever reason, Yamhill County did not, I guess, go along with that. So there it sits. So there is a potential to, over time, and I'm not sure that this is the right time, but to approach the county to have those zone changes amended for this particular type of use, transportation or park use. According to the county, parks is okay, open space is okay, but bridges are not a part of trails for whatever reason. And it's interpretation. So it's very difficult to discuss and how to proceed unless we get into it a little bit more. And that's kind of what we're going to do.
What's the timing on the appeal process?
We have to have the appeal into the county by the 16th of March. So we're going to have a meeting tomorrow and discuss it and go from there.
You know, looking at this committee, I think that the Park District, and I'm not speaking for our board, I'm speaking for myself. The Park District needs your help to basically support Casey and support what we're trying to do for the trails. I mean, we need the public, who you are, to come out and say, this is what we want. And that's what needs to happen, I think, from this group. How you want to go about that is up to the group. But I think that, you know, staff and the board are one thing, the general public is another.
Casey, how can we support your appeal?
Well, this is a democratic country, as far as I understand.
Yes, we can.
So there's 105,000 residents in Yamhill County. It's already been proven that trails are kind of number one on everyone's list, and that even supporters of the Yamhill Trail, you know, the survey that was done a couple years ago supported that. It's getting everyone's support to support
As far as this particular
type of change.
As far as this particular appeal is concerned, is there a public hearing? Is there a letter writing? Can you email us what we can do?
I can do that. It's probably going to go to the commission, the Yamhill County Commissioners. I don't know a date. That'll be determined.
Keep us informed, and maybe some subset of us can write letters or attend.
Sure. The more support we get, the more positive our outcome is going to be.
Okay, keep us informed.
Could we as a committee have a resolution or some type of letter of support for this appeal, and or to make changes to the current code that's restrictive to us, not pertaining to the Yamhill West Side Trail, but our own trails that are on this particular land? Is that something that we are able to do within our delegation from the board of directors and our authority?
Sounds like a genius idea to me. I like it.
I like it too.
I'm not sure if that's a Cat answer or a Bart or Jim answer.
That's a yes.
Yeah.
That's a yes.
My assumption is that that would be appropriate for your committee.
Here's what I say. I say, I apologize if I came off as anything but a proponent of the Yamhill West Side Trail as an individual. I think this leads us into a good conversation that I just wasn't anticipating us having because of Casey. Appreciate Casey you being here and giving us an update now. I was going to have you come in April, but I just, other than the current project to work on the trail maintenance of our existing trails that, from my understanding, aren't necessarily at threat here, our ability to function as a group that makes recommendations for the improvement and expansion of CPRD trails, we can't sit back and not at least, as a committee in the scope that we have, try and raise concern around our limitations due to the county's ordinance. And I think that we should, to some degree, whether that's through some type of resolution that we are able to write up and vote on, and or any combination of us attending those meetings and making our voice heard, mustering support. I'm not sure what we can do as far as, we're talking about promotion of the trails that exist and the parks that exist. Is this something that we want to promote to the general public and get petitions or public participation at meetings promoted through our channels and our advocacy on this committee? I would support that. And I think we can't really move forward with much more than these work parties until we do so. I'm not sure how others feel about that, but
It's public support, participation.
Yes. Is that a question? Yes.
I don't want to be hash in doing so. I want us to make sure that we are informed, one, and that we can receive the support and guidance we need from staff and the board of directors. But I think that's something that we should spend the bulk of our next meeting in April discussing, and potentially if we can work via email to compose something at least that we can vote on and see what else we can do beyond that. Obviously, Casey said that he will keep us informed on the process with this bridge that was rejected, and see if we can't support that.
I hate to interrupt here, but if our appeal is due March 16th, your time for action is tonight.
Can I make a motion?
Yep.
I move that we appoint someone to draft a motion in support of Ewing Young Bridge, and that the committee vote now to allow ourselves to vote on that via email, so we can meet that March 16th deadline.
I'm going to, is there a second?
So moved.
I'm going to hold this vote for discussion now that it is motioned and seconded. Kat, can we vote via email for public record?
Yes, you can, as long as you have a quorum.
So as long as everybody gets that email with that draft motion, and all the discussion is out in the open within that email forum, then by state law, that's legal for us to do.
If at least half of your group replies.
We do not have quorum. We said that our committee does not have a designated quorum in our bylaws. So I'm assuming that just means everyone is copied on the email. Is that right, Kat?
Yeah, as I understand it, yes.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. I guess that requires us to appoint someone now. Anyone want to volunteer?
Matt?
I'll volunteer.
Thank you, Matt.
Matt.
Awesome.
Matt,
Is I get agreement from Casey that he can send me what that appeal is gonna look like? So we can include that, or include some of the same language?
This is all consistent with the Yamhill Trail discussion about the April 6th Planning Commission meeting, that we need public support.
Yeah, I will forward you what we determine that we will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, committee.
Yes, thank you. Alan, you mentioned this April 6th meeting. Are they discussing the ordinance that is in question here? That's the one relating to trails on agricultural land? Is that what's happening?
Yes, and it's my understanding, and I'm kind of new to it, that the opposition has come into the planning commission with their own language that is opposed to what planning commission staff has proposed. We've got these people coming up saying, this is what the language ought to look like. And the planning staff has said, this is what the language ought to look like.
I'm sorry, I want to clarify. You're saying that the Commission of Citizens is taking up staff from the planning department's recommendations?
Yes, the opponents of trails countywide has organized and has come up with language that the planning commission, that they want the planning commission to adopt, which restricts trails on AF 10 zones and maybe more zones. I don't know.
Could affect EF zones. It could affect all zones.
Okay. At the same time, the planning commission staff has come up with language, the professionals that work for the county, saying this is what we ought to do. And commissioners have stacked the planning commission with their own people who are going to favor the opponents. It's all stacked. And that we ought to show up in person or with letters. And I can get more information if we're interested, but that's the best I understand it now, is that we ought to say, we support the county staff language in the ordinance. Best I can do.
And this is gonna occur after our next, or before our next meeting.
Before. To that point, I'll move a motion to appoint someone to draft a letter clarifying our support behind a ordinance that allows for trails to be permitted on the EF and other related zones in question through a vote via email.
I'll volunteer, but if it's on behalf of the CPRD Trails Committee, it has less credence than it does from individuals.
Is that
If
a,
I give
I
some,
second that quick, I second it quick, you're volunteering to do it.
I'll pursue it with the,
so we have a motion and a second,
And a
discussion.
volunteer.
Alan volunteers.
I'll pursue it with the MHA board, how we can best support it.
Yeah, I think if we can, if Alan, you're volunteering to draft something from this committee to support, or I guess in this case to argue that we don't support what they're proposing, and we support the inverse option of allowing trails and supporting trails on these lands. As a committee, we can then do so as individuals as well.
I'll get more clarification.
Okay. But the motion that's been seconded is for a letter to be drafted on behalf of this committee. I do want to clarify that does not restrict us from as individuals, and I would encourage us all to do so as individuals. But this motion that we're about to vote on is for the committee and having a letter to
That's
represent the
down to
committee.
us as individuals, but I'll get clarification.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, so you'll send like a time, location, kind of out email or?
Yeah, we just had a meeting yesterday.
Any other discussion? All right.
Quentin?
Oh, Kat? Yep.
Quentin committee, I just wanted to interject and let you know that CPRD, when I've been speaking with news media who are quite interested in following this, our official stance has been at this point that we have no comment. However, you as a committee do have a voice and you do have the prerogative to make comment. So I just want you to keep that in mind, and that letter would be appropriate to not only submit to the public, but also to submit to news media. So if you so choose, and also to the commission in time to be included in their packet for public comment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Yeah.
Yes, Marty.
One more thing, and I've been sitting on this for a little while, wondering for the right time, maybe now it's the right time. We have a lot of conversion of agricultural land in the Chehalem Mountains to like Street of Dreams, gated communities, multi-million-dollar homes, which I'm okay with 80 million. I don't care about the development, but $4 or $6 million homes, those would be allowed by the commissioners. I think if they're going to cut up ag land and put in these developments, they should, especially if those developments are spanning two roads, there should be a public right of way through them, similar to in the city. And so, that, I don't know if that's something that people are interested in talking about. We're not opposed to development per se, but if you are going to develop ag lands and rural ag land, zoned lands, then it should be either like a fire road to get through for the public, or even a trail. And that would kind of maybe juxtapose this opposition for trails to the pro stance of developing ag land into upper end homes. And because I think there is maybe some apparent hypocrisy there, which I don't really care about any of that. I just care about getting some trails installed in these areas. So maybe that would be a nice thing to put forth to the planning people if people thought it was a good idea. Specifically, the idea that if you're going to develop agricultural lands into housing developments, that you allow a right of way. I think that can be a road. I mean, so right now, for example, they have to put a road in to get out, but they don't allow folks to come in through that way. For example, in the Street of Dreams development that happened on top of Chehalem Mountain. So
Pick your battles.
yeah, but I think so it would mean that as they develop these homes on ag land, that we would also get some right-of-way passage versus no right-of-way passage, which is what's happening now. So that's kind of a big topic. I would be okay writing something like that up. for people to look at, because it's an idea that I've had for a while. But if we think it's just an awful idea or not even having traction, I'm fine with that too. I can put it back in my pocket.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think, including that in the letter, I think the way that we can go about this is probably for both letters. Alan and Matt, if you can send me the first draft that you have, we'll put it out as a, an item that we are working on via email, and then we will run a vote once we've all had an opportunity to provide proposed edits to it. So for example, what's Alan's writing his, Marty, you feel free to work with Alan and submit anything that you want included. But if there's Alan provides us a first draft, we can all, from my understanding, provide recommendations for edits, and then we can vote on a final version via email. So we can utilize that email to include specific things that we want to address above the overall message of we believe trails should be allowed in certain instances on these types of lands. You can bring up, that juxtaposition there and the reason why we should have trails for access to these areas that are being developed, or on the inversely, we have trails we just want to have, or we have parks we just want to have trails because they're zoned as agricultural. So we already have one vote that's been approved. This vote is still in discussion and open, but I think if we can collaborate via email on the specific wording, and then when we are comfortable with any edits that are proposed, we can move a vote via email. So all folks are understanding that we'll have some time, what Alan brings us, we don't just have to vote on. We can propose edits, and then once we are comfortable, we will vote. I'll call a vote, and we'll need to do a second electronically, however that works, and then we'll take a vote after we've had that discussion via email. Are folks clear on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? I think Marty, you just want to address that. Let's go ahead and include that, whether you send it to Alan or we include it via the discussion email. Okay.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
I have one other thing, just a question. So, and I don't know if this pertains or not, but if I own a large winery, let's say, and I want to put a trail on that property, will I be able to? I mean, the public can come to my winery and use it. Will I be able to? That's a question that someone might want to talk to the commissioners about, because the reality is there's a lot of them out there.
Or Hazelnut Farm, you want to do some agro-tourism.
Right. So, just a thought.
And I guess to that point, are there resources that we can muster together for folks to be informed when we write this letter and vote on it, as far as like LUBA and the county's authority and what they're specifically asking for? Alan, maybe you can find us the specific ordinance that they've proposed so we can read through it, or any other legal counsel interpretation of this. I mean, has CPRD met with legal counsel as far as the path forward that the CPRD can take in response to this? Or
I know that, I don't know, Casey, you might be able to highlight this. I know that John Bridges worked with us on some of this. I'm not sure how current that is. So that would be a Don Clements or Casey answer.
I can give you one answer to Canoes and Vineyards. They advertise hikes on the internet for $75, and they use existing vineyard roads. It's not a new trail.
There you go.
And so the answer is yes. There's sort of an erosion of the intent. It's not a trail, it's a vineyard road. I think the answer is yes. That on an existing farm, whether it's hazelnut or vineyard, you can have hikes. The hot button is a trail, new trail.
awesome.
In EF 10 zones, because that relates to the West Sider Trail.
Well, I do want to go ahead. Is there any final discussion on this? In addition to this discussion via email on the final wording and the official vote via email, we'll try to muster together the resources that can help us inform that decision in the writing. Is there any discussion around this before we go ahead and vote on it and then move forward with the working via email? All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We are, for the first time in my tenure, getting to the actual end time of our meeting, scheduled. Board of Directors report. Obviously, we have two there in attendance. The last two meetings have been interesting, to say the least, but happy to provide a report to the Board of Directors. Great public participation there as well. Some of the same folks that attend our meeting attend theirs. I presented our recommendation to maintain all the trail names, and can't quite recall if that was adopted or if it was just, that was already the staff's intention. So I think that we're just fine with moving forward, understanding that the trails at the Bob and Crystal Riley Park will remain as previously named, which is what we voted on in February. Other than that, nothing else really to report from there. I did include two public comments that were submitted via email, including Dana's comment to the Board of Directors. And then also Brian Bowman sent me an email. But other than that, there was nothing else to report.
I have a comment.
Yep, go ahead, Alan.
I commented, we both sat in for a portion of the last board meeting, and there was a request for qualifications for some groups to do a master plan for Riley Park, which was news to me. And I talked to Jim about what next steps there are for our committee, and he said to engage that company, whoever is selected, to do the master plan. But I don't know what the master plan looks like, why we need it, what they do. That's maybe more than we're going to get into tonight. I read some of the responses to the request for qualification. It sounded like they get county approval. Part of what they do is get county approval, but that's a whole new wrinkle to me as far as Bob and Crystal Riley Park is concerned.
Yeah, I'll just mention that the RFP went out through a standardized process. They have to do it for any of these types of reports in December. As you saw in the packet, there were several bids on that. And that, to what Casey said earlier, he mentioned it very briefly, that there are user group representatives. I believe he said Brian Bowen and a few other folks that have been at our meetings that are going to be involved in evaluating a recommendation to the Board of Directors in their final selection of this firm to carry out a upwards of year-long process in this master plan, which will outline recommendations based off of environmental factors, general practices within parks and recreation management, as far as what that park should be. Obviously, trails are a major component of that, and I think the CPRD has made that very clear in its RFQ. So the idea is that this master plan will kind of take, we'll be obviously folks that can get involved in that process through public hearings and through our own recommendations, but a firm will come in and simply lay out, you have this park, here's some options as far as the best utilization of that land. And I'm not sure if there's anything else you would add, Casey, but it's a pretty standardized process that we can, as individuals, participate in as well. But it goes as a recommendation to the board, I believe.
Why don't you just put some signs up and call it a park? Why do we need all this?
Well,
I'm
gonna answer that from experience. If we do not have a plan going forward, you tend to have people that have agendas and will try and force them upon the district. And not that they're wrong, but we need a sustainable park up there. And we have limited resources. There are historical resources that we need to preserve. There are forest lands that we need to preserve. And the whole essence of the park needs to be preserved the way that the Rileys intended it to be. When we I have seen people try to get involved, and we've actually had to stop some people from doing what they suggested were good uses for the park. And it was at that time that we realized that a master plan would be very important for that park, so that the public can use it for what it was intended to be used for.
And then also to add what Casey says is that if we decide that we want to go for a grant for that park, or we decide, or the county comes in and says, hey, we're going to do this concerning that park, or we want to go to the county and ask and say that we want to do this, you need to have a master plan. They're going to ask for that. Not only master plan, traffic study, environmental studies, all that's asked for. So they're good to have, and that's one of the reasons why.
Does the county have to approve the master plan?
No.
No, but it's a good idea to have aware of it.
In case you've mentioned before that there's a CPRD master plan in the works as well, correct? And that does get approved by the county?
That is at this point into the county as part of the campground. It's not the whole master plan, but it's a section of it. And Ewing Park is in there, and the campground's in there, and the bypass is in there. So there's multiple things in it, the county right now, and we'll see what happens.
Does that help, Alan?
Yep.
Awesome. Before we close, I just want to reiterate, we have 2 votes to be had via electronic mail, email. I guess that's what we call it. We'll have further discussion on edits to those 2 documents. I personally, taking the soapbox from the board of directors, I would encourage everyone to also consider either writing their own letters in support or in opposition to the ordinance, and or attending the meetings, the public hearings that are available for those. And anything else that we can do as a committee, we can certainly do past this appeal and this initial meeting here in April. I'm sure this will be a continual discussion for us until we have some more ability to do what we want and what arguably is within our jurisdiction and our authority to do so. So thank you, everyone, for that. Anything else for the good of the order?
Thank you, Quentin.
Thank you, Quentin.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and close today's meeting.
Your fingers.